Welcome to From the Valley Podcast 102. I've got a very special guest with me today. His name is Kieran Hoare from Merthyr. So, love Kieran. Here he is now. G'day, Kieran. How are you?
Yeah, good, Tim. How are you? So I just got to check all my stuff's working. Just haven't had a chance to check.
I can hear you perfectly, and I can see you as well. So you can see me in here.
Sure can. You look like you're in a pretty good spot there, Tim. Where's that? Queenstown? No.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I'm not there right now, but that's a picture I took when I was there once. And come September, I think it's probably I won't be able to get there until then. We've all, if everything sort of goes to plan, then hopefully I'll be able to spend some time in September there. I guess over the next few months, certainly won't be able to get there. We'll just see what happens, I guess, with COVID and these trans-Tasman flights and so forth.
Yeah, well, you'd think Australia and New Zealand's doing pretty well. So for the sake of both of our tourism industries, you'd hope that they'd get it up and running by August or so.
Yeah, definitely, Kieran. Anyway, welcome along to the podcast, Kieran. I think episode number 102. So Kieran Hoare from Merthyr. Now, Kieran, thanks for coming on the podcast today, my friend, and it's good to see you. It's been a little while since we spoke, isn't it? I think maybe I was trying to think we spoke this year about anything, maybe not. But how have you been anyway?
Yeah, thanks for having us along, Tim. It's been crazy times, of course, since we last spoke, and it's been pretty good. I'm actually working from home today,
yes.
And unfortunately, my little boy is sick from daycare, so you might hear some noises in the background. So apologies in advance.
No, that's okay. That's fine. But working from home, that's been something that has certainly become a bit more of the norm for probably both of us a bit. We started. I didn't really up until March. I'd never really worked from home too much. I'd always just gone to the office and worked from the office, and I've been very comfortable there. But once sort of COVID hit, I got a new sort of computer set up done at home, and once I got the new computer set up and working faster than being in the office, I've probably been working from home more than half the time since then. So. Which has been really, really good. Have you been sort of working from the office at all? Or?
Yeah, we got everyone back on a rotating, half in, half off, half from home basis from the start of last week. Just because, some people were getting a bit stir crazy and we liked that camaraderie, but we were surprised about how productive everyone was. And, I'm the same. I got myself a better office set up, and I've kind of found that my routine's changed a bit too. So I might do a few more things during the day, like, do some cooking and, be there for the kids' dinner and that kind of thing. And then log back on it after 8 p.m. and pump out a little bit of more work then. And, I think there might be some habits that change for the longer term from all of this.
Yeah, definitely. I certainly, I guess what's changed for me apart from working from home, I probably more recently have decided to go walking and exercising a bit more too. So I've probably lost a few kilos actually.
So I saw, Tim, that 100 is a big number for you. Both 100 episodes of the podcast, more than 100 there, and less than 100 for your weight. So congratulations. It's quite a monumental number.
Yeah, it is. It's certainly, if you look at the last decade, I've probably rarely been under, I think it was probably 2009 was actually the last time I was below 100. So that's probably about 11 years ago now. When you look at that, and so being 11 years older than then, it's not always easy to get back to the weight that you were when you're a 30-year-old or something. So it's I think the last year or two I've sort of kept the weight a bit. It's getting down slightly, and then I've sort of pushed it a bit more, a bit more recently.
Well, I don't quite understand it with myself. I've been eating more chocolate and bad foods at home and drinking more wine since we've done this social isolation. And I seem to have lost a couple of kilos rather than put any on. I don't know if that's muscle or what, but I don't quite understand.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, that's for sure. So I guess how I sort of go with these podcasts, Kieran, I guess we'd like to start with, I guess, a bit about early life. Were you born in Brisbane or another part of the world?
Yeah, I'm pretty much born in Brisbane. I was born in Townsville, but I came down to Brisbane at the ripe old age of 1. So it's my hometown.
And you've been here ever since?
Yeah, been here ever since. I haven't done the working overseas stint. Been on a few holidays,
I did,
obviously
yeah.
overseas, and had those kind of hospitality jobs in uni and before. And then I've just been at the one legal firm since I got out of uni. So I'm a bit odd for kind of my generation. I'm a stick in the one spot.
Well, sort of very similar to myself in a way, I guess. I mean, you've been involved in your firm since coming out of UQ or wherever. Is that where you went? The UQ?
Yeah, yeah.
But I was obviously born in Tassie. I moved up here in 2000, and the firm Confidential Tax and Business Services has been working there since May 2000, and so that's just clicked on 20 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and so I've been a director for 12 of the last 12 of those years. So, but yeah, we'll get to a bit about your career as well. But I guess a bit about early life. Whereabouts? What sort of area did you grow up in Brisbane?
Yeah, I was a Western Suburbs boy, so I was out at Chapel Hill and went to a few different primary schools. My mum was a teacher, so I went to some with hers, but then I was getting in too much trouble, so she got me to go to a local one that she didn't teach at. And then I went to Brisbane Boys Grammar and UQ. And nowadays I'm living in, I haven't moved too far, I'm living in Red Hill, is where I'm
nice
doing
area.
this podcast from. Sorry?
Very close to everything, Red Hill, isn't it? It's you're very close to the Broncos, close to everything, I guess, on the inner north side.
Yeah, and I used to live in Paddington in a smaller place, and Red Hill, where we're living now, it's better access for families and all the parks, and we're all celebrating that the playgrounds are open again for the kiddies, which is good.
Yeah. So, what did you get up to any sport at all when you're at school? Did you any particular sports that you played or got into?
Look, I wasn't known for my sporting prowess, Tim. I was, I was more of a muso and a writer and that kind of thing. But I did play rugby for the Mighty E's and did a little bit of swimming and that kind of thing. But no, I didn't go down in any of the record books for the sport.
Okay. No. So, can you remember what was your first job that you ever had, sort of in your high school days?
My first job, and I managed to get it through nepotism, through the family. I think I was 12 and was in what was called the beverage bar in the Winter Garden. And so, I could hardly see over the top of those counters, but I was there helping make the milkshakes and the smoothies and, do those kind of things. And it was great actually having that experience of, working to earn money. And, I seem to have a bit more money than my friends, but when you work for it, you kind of value it a bit too, Tim.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so in the hospitality industry back when you were sort of young, I think sort of remember that would have been, you sort of been working in the late 90s, I guess, and sort of early. What was Brisbane like back in those days? I mean, what was it like to sort of work in that industry, in those sort of industries?
Yeah, well, to start off with, it was a long time ago, working probably in the early to mid 90s in the Winter Garden. That was the place to shop, and it was a huge thing, even just Sunday shopping. And that was one of the first places to do that. And that was there before the Myer Centre even came. So that was before I think the suburban shopping centres had those Sundays and had taken off. It was a much different dynamic back then. And from that job, I think through uni, then I progressed to, I think I went overseas, and then I got a job delivering alcohol for a company called Quinn Direct. And so I got to know all around Brisbane and different bars and restaurants and that type of thing, and deliver to individuals' places. And I got to, through all of that hospitality years, I guess you really get to know people well and how to deal with people and what different types of people are, and how to get on with people. So as much as we gloss over those kind of uni jobs and those early experience, I think they are quite forming of character and the rest of your work life to some extent.
Yeah, certainly a job like that where you're sort of getting around and seeing a lot of people at a young age. I think that's certainly would give you a lot of skills early in your career, when you're obviously going into a legal career, which basically set a good foundation, I guess, as far as where you've taken your career. Would you say that?
Yeah, and to be fair, like when we're interviewing people for legal jobs, it's more than just their grades. So, someone who's just gone to uni and just studied, they haven't really had much of that real world experience yet. So there's a lot of that attitude and, that life experience that counts a lot, I think, in the real world, in the job world, more so than just the book smarts.
Oh, definitely, real world experiences certainly. It's one of those things that's very important, and you obviously get to get out there, and the more that you do it as the young you are, the more confident you become, the more you sort of feel within your own skin and that sort of thing as well, and that not outside your sort of areas of depth and stuff like that. UQ as a university, was that quite a good experience? Do you think that was quite a you think that was a good move at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I was in a different headspace back then. It was a good place to meet up with my friends and have a lot of parties. And
Yep.
I think there was one semester where my contact hours were Monday morning from 8 a.m. till 7:30 p.m. or 8 p.m. with hardly a break in there. And then I'd finish for the week on Tuesday afternoon at about 2 p.m., which I think was a bit dangerous because there was a few Mondays where I was a bit dusty from the weekend. But law is one of those ones where you don't necessarily need all of those contact hours. But yeah, great facilities. And, looking back on it, it all makes a lot more sense now that I've practiced law in the real world rather than, just doing the academic exercises at uni. I think I'd approach it quite differently if I went back again now.
Academically, did you I guess from that point of view, you are fairly comfortable with the uni going through and doing quite well in the coursework and that sort of thing, and achieving?
Again, I wasn't the alumni scholar of the year or anything, but I got enough to get decent enough marks to progress with my career. It's one of those things. I think to a certain extent, it's pretty handy to get your foot in the door in the job market, but it's not something that you wear as a badge for the rest of your life. I think some young people probably get a little bit too focused on the be all and end all of it necessarily being those marks. There's lots of different ways to get there, and especially I guess the way the world is changing so much that your marks and your uni is just one kind of small facet, because there's a lot of that stuff that technology is going to be able to do, and there's a lot of information that's at everyone's fingertips now. So it's more about how you apply those softer skills, which I think is becoming even more important than necessarily the technical recall and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so how old were you when you decided that a career specifically in law was for you anyway? When did you make that realization?
My father was a lawyer. I think my grandfather and great-grandfather was a lawyer. My auntie, she was an appeal court judge in the Supreme Court here in Queensland. My uncle had been a lawyer. So, law ran in the family, Tim, and Dad warned me against being a lawyer. So of course that's what I've become, a lawyer. And I was initially doing it to do journalism law. I was initially doing journalism law, and that was with the view of, a law degree would help out and was recommended for journalism. But to be fair, I got a bit disillusioned with the journalist side of it. I realised what the nature of that kind of game was, and I didn't like it. And then got my first job, and actually from getting that experience in a real legal practice and for real client problems and dealing with real people, then I've quite relished private practice. Certainly when I was straight out of high school and in uni, I probably didn't envisage myself being where I would be today.
Yeah, so I guess that's a bit about that. What about now? When did you first? I don't know. I'm trying to work out where I'm going to go next. Probably with your job at Merthyr Law. Just tell me about those early years. Obviously, you started out sort of in like a clerk or something like that in those early sort of roles, and then obviously you became a lawyer, and then at the young age of 27, you obviously got offered an opportunity you couldn't really refuse.
Yeah, so it was quite a daunting experience, and I feel for the young people coming straight from uni. And whilst I had a lot of those jobs in the hospitality and that kind of thing, I never really had a proper office job before, and so some of the concepts of just starting were kind of foreign for me. And it was quite a small office when I started with Steve Grant, and I think there was a conveyancing solicitor. There might have been one other lawyer who was there like a day a week, and they weren't there for too long. And so it was really from day one. On day one, I think I was in a room negotiating obviously with my partner Steve, but my first job was the sale of a nightclub, and then every day there'd be different job, nightclub in the valley. Every day there'd be different and quite different experiences in the law, and that's a good thing to get that really broad education to start off with, and getting in front of real clients, from day one. But geez, Tim, it was daunting. There were some days where I was stressed and you didn't feel like going to work, and but every day you got a bit more experience, and things wouldn't bother you as much until 1 year in, 2 years in, 3 years in. You don't know all the answers, but you know how to not get I guess as wigged out by certain scenarios and certain problems, to the stage where you quite enjoy having these scenarios in front of you and helping the young ones through that same kind of journey.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I mean, you obviously, growing up in with these sort of, obviously in Brisbane, being a lawyer and seeing, being exposed to things like the nightclub sales and building developments and that type of thing. But I guess, what I sort of know you as, I guess, as well, is that you're a self-managed super fund specialist. So that's your area, well, the area of specialisation that you're obviously promoting yourself, and obviously very, very, one of the best in that area. How did you first become involved in being an expert in self-managed super funds? When did you make that sort of decision, and how has that sort of evolved over time for you?
Yeah, so Tim, a lot of Merthyr Law's clients, or most of our Merthyr Law's clients are, like your clients, and they're referred by accountants and financial planners. And a lot of those people are ones who run their own businesses. I typically say, even when they're with other business partners, they're spending their own money. They're not spending other people's money. And then sometimes we might get people spending their own money on their estate planning, where they're, the executives for, some of those bigger companies where they are spending other shareholders' money. But I guess getting a lot of exposure to that, the commercial side and that estate planning side, I quite liked some of the scenarios that were in front of me with the self-managed super funds. Both the technical challenge that, that law kept on changing, and there were so many ways, it could be arbitraged, and, some experience there could really help client situations. But I also liked a lot of the clients who had those self-managed super funds themselves too. They just seemed a lot, somewhere on the golf course, and I thought that's a pretty good way to be, and had a good outlook in life. And it was back in about 2005. I thought, okay, well, I'll specialise. I'd like to specialise in these self-managed super funds, and so made sure I tried to get all the jobs for those at Merthyr Law and promote myself as that. And quite luckily, they entirely changed the law in 2007 with what we call those super reforms. So that put me in a good stead, as in, got to know those reforms pretty well, and didn't have to spend as much time on some of those older concepts like RBLs and market-linked pensions and all of those kinds of things. And it's one of those areas, I guess, that, every, 10 years or so, there's some pretty major changes to the super rules, and every year there's some kind of changes. So it's something that, people can't just set and forget, and, they do need the assistance of, someone like me. And one thing that appealed to me too about it is, compared to, some of the work I'd done in commercial, whether that be commercial business sales and conveyancings, or whether that be, I did some litigation in my quite early days too. There was a lot of time pressures where you had to stay back late, drop everything. And I figured also with self-managed super funds, you probably get a bit more leeway. So it's probably a pretty good area to specialise in, for that longer term, for, now where I am with family and that kind of thing. And I'm very happy with that decision. It's an area, I love being a super geek and getting into the technical side of it. And I guess those kind of clients, like I was talking about before, Tim, who are on the golf course, they want someone like me to know, hey, I've run it by Kieran, he's got the best solution, or he'll say, no, that doesn't work, how about this? But they don't want to know all the ins and outs. They trust that you and me and all the people at the back end will sort out that kind of detail, as long as they know they're in those good hands.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can see that. I can see it's definitely an attractive type of thing to specialise in. I mean, they're obviously not as a great number of specialists out there that are well known for self-managed super fund specialisation that I'm aware of, sort of in Brisbane. So obviously fairly well known when it comes to that, and obviously that's. I do like the way you sort of do your promotion for that type of designation as well. With obviously doing webinars from time to time, or video logs, that sort of thing, where you're discussing different sometimes technical issues, sometimes just real life sort of issues, where you're using examples of somebody in everyday business, buying the commercial premises and how they do that in a self-managed super fund, and here's how you can potentially save a lot of money, getting more into a low tax area, that sort of stuff. So it's some really good advice that you've given that I've seen over the last decade when it comes to that specialisation.
That was our last job, wasn't it, Tim? Getting a property into a super fund and saving the stamp duty while we're doing it. So
yeah, stamp duty, but not only that, it's going to save lots of tax going forward as well. So if you do make that bold decision to transfer an asset like a commercial premises into a self-managed fund, the amount of tax that you're going to save going forward is quite substantial when you're looking at even 5-10 years or something. You do all those sums, it's just that in itself is a saving. But knowing things like how to sort of I guess do different types of legal declarations in order to not pay any stamp duty, takes a bit of skill, takes a bit of knowledge, a bit of reading up, and obviously going through the process from start to finish to know that you can do that sort of thing.
Yeah, and so that's why I love doing, I don't want to bore everyone with technical posts, so I'd put webinars on for the people who are interested in the really technical stuff. Otherwise, I try to keep it pretty simple in a lot of the shorter social media stuff. But, if people don't know about it, well, they're missing out. And it makes a lot of sense to have a commercial premises, if that's your idea, to be paying rent to yourself and for your own retirement rather than to somebody else. And especially with some of the interest rates that are out there with some of these non-bank lenders, all I ask for is with accountants and financial advisors, if they are in a scenario, bounce it off me, and hey, maybe there's a different way of doing it where there can be a bit more arbitrage and save a bit of money. So if I can cut through to get that message across, so people get on the blower and say, hey Kieran, I got this situation, what do you think? Well then it's all been worth it, a lot of this social media posting.
Yeah, no, social media is obviously something that's taken over our sort of world, and it's been huge, and obviously keeping up to date, keeping on top of that, certainly the more engagement you have with your clients and customers that may engage in those sort of media, forms of media in order to get what they want.
Well, I think Tim too, I think even just looking, we're friends on Facebook and I see you on LinkedIn, and instead of you just being a bean counter, now accountants are humans, lawyers are humans, we've all got a life, and we've got something that we're doing behind there. You're right into your music and going out, and
yes.
An accountant with a personality, there can be more to us just than being a number cruncher or just being a super geek. And I think some of that, putting yourself out there on social media, if someone thinks you're an absolute dick, well, you probably didn't want to deal with them anyway, but they've got to know you a bit on social media already.
True, very true.
So the people who find you through that, I think you're already going to gel with them. Yeah,
very, very true, mate. Yeah, the other thing that you've got a bit of I'm not going to sort of dwell on technical stuff too much, but obviously another thing that I've seen that you're very passionate about is estate planning. And obviously I've seen I think you even did some books up that were quite really good, easy to read type books for estate planning, which I found useful, but also enjoyable, and also done in such a way that it's engaging to mum and dad.
Yeah, and that's another one of my missions, I guess, Tim, is a lot of people, especially people who have got more complicated circumstances, put it off. They strive for this perfection, that they want to come to their lawyer and go, I've got all the answers, can you please do up a will like this? And, guess what? One, they hardly ever get there. And two, that they don't do this all day, every day. They don't see clients in this estate planning space all the time, so they don't have all those answers, and might not even know what some of those issues are. So I guess for any kind of estate planning, the most important thing is to just get started. And if we can get something in place that's better than what you've currently got, which for a lot of people is nothing, then it's infinitely better than what you've currently got, and we can keep tweaking that over time. You know, you might change some of those appointments, you might tweak a few things as your kids grow up and that type of thing. But, you know, I was just hassling a client of ours who's worth multi millions. And I was just having a look at our system, you know, goes on the phone to give him his hassle up. And we had a file opened in 2003, a file in 2006, a file in 2008, a file in 2015, a file in 2019, and he hasn't signed his will from either of these. He just keeps on getting us to update it. And I think, you know, that's a danger that a lot of people kind of face is, you know, they get scared about it. And, you know, that job, I guess we kind of failed at that, but I'm hassling him pretty hard, and I've built in a bit more of a system to hassle people. And it's things like, I guess, you know, often people going on a trip overseas really motivates them to start that estate planning process. And COVID-19 has been a huge motivator too.
Definitely too. Yeah.
We've all had time to reflect and realise that we are mortal, and, you know, we shouldn't be just burying these issues and leaving, you know, a real problem for all of our loved ones behind. It's pretty selfish, really.
No, definitely. No, just wanted to touch on that because I know that's an area you're passionate about. I've always been passionate about estate planning myself, and you know, your books are certainly a very good reference, and also, you know, very good service that you provide in that area as well. And
we did I did a few humorous animations too. I got some cameos in the office from different people acting. So you know, try to keep it reasonably light for everyone too.
Yeah, that's yeah. So I guess we've talked a bit about a few technical things, but you mentioned that you've travelled around the world a little bit. Whereabouts have you been?
Yeah, so the first trip was, you know, the usual kind of Europe and the States and that kind of thing, and then I took a few months off while I was still at uni, and went right through Argentina and Brazil, and, you know, hopped in Brazil, and you know, that was quite life-forming. And since then, yeah, I've kind of gone skiing a few times, and you know, back to Europe with my, you know, now current wife, and Japan a few times. Some of the Asian countries. Would love to do more travelling. Probably, you know, my eldest is almost 4 years old, and as far as that international travel goes, we've really eased up on it since having kids. So, you know, got to, I guess, at some point get some discipline back in, and you know, do some more overseas travelling. But the kids don't care; they're as happy going to the local creek or going to you know, the Gold Coast as they are going, you know, the other side of the world. You know, especially when they're, you know, this age, before they're at school.
So have you been to New Zealand before, or Tassie?
Yeah, I've been to New Zealand and Tassie a bit. Had a honeymoon on Tassie because my wife, after I'd been going out with her for 10 years, I proposed to her in a ryokan in Japan in the Izu Peninsula just before then, you know, at about 9 years of going out. And we set the venue for the wedding and the reception and everything, even paid for the upgrade of the health insurance to cover pregnancy. And unfortunately got the timing wrong, and Erin was 5 months pregnant at our wedding. And so that's why we went to Tasmania, a fairly safe place for our honeymoon. And, you know, just the great food, and, you know, just so beautiful. And, you know, for example, New Zealand, not just the skiing, but what I like about New Zealand and Tasmania is you go for a drive, and the whole drive's exciting, you know, curvy roads, and it's just beautiful scenery everywhere, whereas you've got to be a bit more dedicated in Australian outback sometimes. You can drive for 6 hours and it's the same straight road. You know? Not that there's anything wrong with the outback. It's beautiful in its own way for that vastness. But I really enjoy, you know, New Zealand and Tasmania for just the scenery. And my wife and her family are from Scotland originally, and you know, going up in the highlands of Scotland and through all the lochs and, you know, up the Isle of Skye. It's pretty special.
You've been to Scotland then before?
Yeah, a couple of times.
Yeah. What do you think of that place?
Yeah, it's lovely. Like I said, it's just beautiful. Sometimes, you know, some of those accents are a bit hard to hear. I think when I first had a family function at Erin's, there was one guy sitting next to me. I didn't understand a word he was saying. You know, I think I heard "wee dram" a few times, but then I realised that even Erin's family couldn't understand him sometimes. Yeah, but absolutely beautiful. And one thing I love about travelling too is, I don't know about you, but when you're out travelling and let's say you get on a tram or a train or whatever it is, you just feel alive. And, you know, people just going about their day-to-day business, going to work and peak hour, kind of seem almost like automatons. But, you know, traveling, you just get that real energy and realize just how beautiful the world is and, you know, how alive you kind of feel. So it's something that I think we've you know, got to make sure we keep doing. And it sounds like you make sure you have a plan at the start of the year of, you know, organising a few trips and making sure you get that downtime.
Yeah, definitely. Looking, as I said, yeah, looking forward to more downtime at some stage. But yeah, like Tasmania and New Zealand, just the fresh air is something that stands out for me, and just that, yeah, just it's something you get there that sort of, you know, just makes you feel nice and, you know, yeah. So
You go skiing at all?
I have been snowboarding before in the last couple of years, but 2 out of the last 3 times. Had knee issues, so just sort of not doing it. But I've had the last 3 years, I've had 2 different surgeries with my knees. So one more recently, just as COVID was starting, but that seems to be getting pretty close to fully recovered. I'm walking, obviously. I'm not going to run. There's no point. You know, that causes the issue a lot if you do too much running. My sort of frame, but yeah, walking is good. Yeah. What other sort of recreation activities do you get up to if you've got any spare time? And what do you enjoy doing?
So many years ago, I used to, you know, be right into the triathlons and be up all hours of the morning. This is pre-kids,
really?
and you know, doing all the triathlons and, you know, trying to be that weekend warrior. And then I had a bit of a scare at a Mooloolaba. I had some heat stroke, and, you know, couldn't remember how I got to the finish line or the medical tent. And just slowed it down a bit then, just doing some smaller ones. And nowadays, instead of running, you know, doing any of that stuff to compete, I just like, you know, going for some runs and occasionally going to a fun run and that kind of thing. But it's more just to keep myself in some kind of shape rather than, you know, that competitive kind of edge. I guess my focus has pivoted a bit more towards the kids. And you know what I do, I'm a bit more of a homebody now, I guess, but I love, you know, lunching and wining and dining, but also I love the cooking side of things. So, you know, the barbecuing and into a side at the moment, amazing ribs. And so it's all that Texan barbecue and, you know, how to smoke things properly and, you know, your reverse sears and, you know, all the science of that. And, you know, doing some sauces and, you know, right at the moment I'm, you know, on this day at home, I'm slow cooking some lamb, a lamb kind of stew to make up some nice lamb and rosemary pies now that it's a bit colder. But, you know, so yeah, I guess I've become a little bit more homely in the last couple of years in that regard.
Yeah. Did you ever get into golf? Do you play any golf still, or?
No, so I've never really figured out how to play golf, Tim. So I'm always politely dodging the charity golf day invitations. I think I've dodged a couple of yours in the past too. I'm sorry to say, it's because I'm not just bad. I'm pretty woeful. My hand-eye coordination's never been real good, so it's not something that I think will particularly impress my clients or my colleagues. I'm putting them through that.
Yeah,
but you play pretty regularly, don't you?
Not regular enough though, but mate, probably every couple of months. But yeah, I'd certainly like to play a bit more.
Again, it's a great experience just to, you know, get away and get out in the great outdoors, isn't
it? Yeah. What about extreme sports and anything like that? Do you ever get involved in things like bungee jumping out of planes, or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I've done it all, and
have you? Okay.
Yeah, it's not
More
something that I do every weekend. But the time I went skydiving, so
you've been skydiving? Wow.
They're lining us all up with a bit skydiving and bungee jumping. Yeah, I always say yes to those kind of things. I find when I'm getting older, I'm getting dizzier and vertigo just being on the kids' swing now. So I don't know if I'll be as good as the skydiving and all of that stuff anymore. But waiting for the skydiving, there was this guy. You know, they're lining up, and you know, what's the name of my guy? My guy's name is Stumpy. And I go, why is he called Stumpy? And I go, why do you think? And fair enough, he comes out and he's got a wooden stump for one leg. And I go, oh, how'd you lose that? He said, how do you think? You know, skydiving accident. And so, you know, I've bloody got this, you know, when they go in tandem with you, and I've got this stump going into my bum and the back of me, and, you know, got to land on my bum because he's only got one leg. So, yeah, it was a funny experience the first time skydiving.
Yeah. had something here. Oh, yeah, just on that, yeah. What you're talking about, vertigo. I remember one thing you probably don't want to do if you're sort of getting a bit dizzy in your older age is jet boating. Have you ever been jet boating before?
I've done. I think I've done. You know how they do those ones in New Zealand and in
Yes,
Glassy
yeah.
Falls. I think I've done it in there
Yep.
too. And you know, loved all the Dream World rides and stuff, but I haven't been to the Dream World rides for a good 10 years. So things might have changed for me if I'm struggling on the kids' swings now.
Yeah, jet boating. I mean, what they sort of did when I went on this in the last couple of years, you go. I like going fast and going forward and all that sort of stuff. But then all of a sudden they stop and then they do a fucking spin, and it just gives you just makes you dizzy.
Mine's that over there, but your body's
so. It sort of deters me wanting to do that again because you just they do it about they probably do it about 8 or maybe a dozen times on the whole thing. You go, oh, okay, do a 360. It's just very sort of dizzy sort of.
And anything else for you? You race bikes or do anything crazy?
No, I don't really. I just, as I said, I probably just play a little bit of golf, a bit of walking at the moment. I used to play squash. Haven't done that for 3 years because of the knees, but. Basketball when I was young, still follow basketball, still follow the NBA. I mean, I like watching AFL, obviously, and a few sports like that. So, so that's a bit about what I get up to. That's what I've been up to, I guess. But just going back to a few other bits and pieces. Who do you? I mean, obviously. Mr. Grant, who you work with, Stephen Grant, is it? Yeah. Steve Grant. He's obviously been a big influence. Has he been a fairly big influence on your career? Obviously, been working with him for so long. Has there been anybody else that's had a huge influence on your career?
Yeah, definitely, Steve. He trained me to be a lawyer, and we're quite different personalities. He's quite larger than life. Captain Caveman's his nickname. And Steve was actually my father's first article clerk at Cleary Hall, and I was Steve's first article clerk, and so kind of done that whole circle. And now I think we've both had lots of trainee solicitors and article clerks, and there's a lot of people I kind of take inspiration from, I guess. And, even just my dad would ring him up for some things, not for the technical legal advice, but more like, oh, I'm in this kind of stressful situation. How do I deal with that? And, getting more of that, the softer skill advice, I think sometimes goes a lot further than necessarily, your answers to some technical question.
Yeah. So where do you sort of think about the future as far as law? What's it going to look like in the future? What's going to be the future of Merthyr law? Tell us about what you see in the future, if you can sort of share anything there.
Yeah, so Tim, that's one of the video series we've been doing since a couple of years now. I think 2018. And
I have seen some of those series. Yeah, I've had a look at some of those that you've done.
Called a Journey 2020, which was looking at, okay, well, as a lawyer and a law firm, what are we doing to kind of modernise and move with the times? And what I was really seeing is for all of our businesses, Tim, if we are just about the technical sides or just about a product, we're going to get beaten on price.
Yeah.
Technology is about being able to deliver, the best service that we can to our clients, but we can't forget us in that process, and our clients, they want to be able to bounce ideas off us, and, using technology to really leverage that relationship, get to know our clients, be able to deliver services in different ways. And I was recently asked the question, well, what are you going to do now? Why Journey 2020? And it seemed quite a fortuitous kind of call, it didn't just sound good, but with the whole COVID-19, everyone's had to adopt quite quickly to technology and to using Zoom meetings and doing things online, and including some of the lawyers at Merthyr Law who are a bit reluctant to change their ways. Everyone's been forced to, and so we've been dealing with 84-year-olds doing their wills on Zoom. We've been, people have been doing their online questionnaires. People have been finding us out about us on through social media, etc. And it's not just that too. Making sure, trying to deliver some of our legal services, so incorporating videos into our legal letters, you know, and into our emails. And, you know, some people react a lot better to that. And, you know, like, there's a lot of information that gets imparted when they meet with us. And if they can have some of that stored and, you know, some of those questions that they've commonly got on videos and, you know, doing that kind of thing up for clients, I think that can go a long way. So my idea of the future is, I think, there's going to be bigger tech. So, you know, a lot of those systems and procedures and all of that are going to be, there's going to be less and less providers because, you know, there's winners in the game of software. And, you know, just with your e-conveyancing and that kind of stuff, you can only have one or two, you know, really proper players. But, you know, for all of us, we're still on the coalface delivering those services and calming, you know, our clients and their fears and bringing our experience to the table and that kind of thing. And I think that's what's valued, and, you know, that's what we can continue to leverage moving forward. And, you know, because anyone can kind of access the tax act or the legal rules, so to speak. It's, you know, putting our spin on it all and our experience and, you know, being that trusted advisor. That's not going anywhere. But if we don't keep up with all these changes and these technologies, you know, clients will go to the people who do, because, you know, that's how people want services to be delivered. You know, that they don't want to be stuck in last century. And, you know, if we don't step up, will they find someone who can?
That's well answered. I guess, is there any particular TV shows that you get into, or any sort of books that you've been reading that have been of note in recent times?
Yeah, so you know, I'm just enthralled with this, you know, technology kind of changing everything and kind of eating the world. And Black Mirror has just fascinated me, that series. Have you watched any of that?
No, I haven't really heard too much. Do you say Black Mirror?
Black Mirror. And so that's a series where it's kind of based, I don't know, in the not too distant future, like 5 years from where we are, where it might take one thing, you know, our, you know, use of phones, and then just extrapolate that a bit further to a slightly dystopian kind of future. And then each episode's got different actors, and, you know, it only goes for, I can't remember, half an hour or an hour. And, you know, with this kind of scenario, and they're just fascinating. But the guy who is the director, is the creator of it, he has actually said he's not doing any this year because the world's, you know, that kind of crazy as it is. People don't need, you know, more confronting dystopian kind of plots. You know, he's going to focus on some comedy for this year.
Okay. Is that on Netflix, or where's that on?
Yeah, that's on Netflix. I think there's 5 seasons of it. You know, not that they go particularly long, but yeah, I've really loved that one in the last few years. And then my wife hates me for watching this one, but recently I've been watching this weird animation called The Midnight Gospels, which is fairly new. And
Midnight Gospels.
Yeah, it's all philosophy about religion and you know, the mind and different things like that. It's a bit weird, but yeah, kind of into the philosophy of it. I think yeah, the philosophy of, you know, everything we're doing is pretty fascinating.
Okay, so that's a bit about some TV series that you sort of certainly been into. What about, do you listen to any sort of podcasts, any particular types of podcasts as well? I know a lot of people sort of in this podcast age at the moment. There's some that they listen to. Are you a person that listens to podcasts?
I used to listen to a lot more than I do now. I've got the Audible subscription with Amazon, and so I'm listening to a few more books and that kind of thing now. There was one personality hacker I was listening to a fair bit. I'm trying to remember what they are. I need my list in front of me. I'm sorry, Tim. Of course, you know, your podcast. There were some of those bigger ones. Who are they? Your
Rogan.
Yeah, some of those I kind of got a bit annoyed with them because you have them on and you're doing something, you're driving or you're in the garden and you can't touch your phone, and there's 5 minutes of ads and plugs and stuff like that. So, you know, got a bit sick of those kind of ones. But I quite like those podcasts with the genuine stories where they get people on and that are a bit inspirational. What was a good one?
I think I had one of your friends on recently, Steve Everett. I think he was. Did you see that one?
I haven't heard that one. I was listening to the one with your events manager recently, but I haven't heard Steve's one yet. I'll make sure I do listen to it soon. And your podcasts, what do you do there? Are they on Anchor and on all the different channels? Or
So they're on all the different channels, which are mainly, if you look at, it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and then just Whooshka is, that Whooshka is the platform that hosts the podcast, and it does it for free. That's why they use Whooshka, but Whooshka pushes it out to Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you probably could Google it somehow as well.
And what are your most popular episodes typically, Tim?
It's quite a surprise. I think a lot of the time it must come down to how well the guest of the day shares the podcast.
Yeah.
So if they're out there and if they've got a great network and there's a lot of people in that network that are interested to know what they have to say in a sort of interview type setting, then that becomes quite popular. Certainly with the podcasts that I've done from the Valley series, there aren't really too many that would sort of hit the 100 listen mark. Let's be honest, probably most of them are just over 50 listens or thereabouts for each podcast that we do. I've been doing those ones for nearly coming up to 2 years in July. So we've done 4,000 listens of different podcasts that have happened since then. But yeah, look, going forward, I've sort of had a few other ideas for different series. I've had this one because I came from Tasmania, sort of catching up with school friends. I've done 4 of those episodes. They're all on YouTube as well, so just like a Zoom thing here. It's all up on YouTube, and they've had 100. 2 of those episodes have had over 100 hits on YouTube. So yeah, I'm happy with the way it's.
You want to know the most views on any of social media thing I've ever put out?
Yep.
It's actually, I've got a personal YouTube channel where I did, an animation for my kids.
Yes.
That's about it. But I did a video, a montage of a video. I went fishing with right a couple of 100 kilometres off the north tip of New Zealand. Did a charter boat, marlin fishing, and so I did a clip of that, and put together some highlights of the marlin fishing with Dad and a couple of his friends, and it's got an 1,000 times more than my usual views. It's like got 8,000 views or something. It had a lot more than anything else. Any of my legal stuff I've put up there, that's for sure.
So what do you think the reason for that is? Any particular reason why something like that would have been so popular? Has it been like hashtagged, or what? How do you think?
Well, maybe the hashtag, but I guess people like fishing more than they like law, Tim.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess it's interesting what people look at. I mean, it is interesting. What interests people. I mean, but yeah, any sort of social activity or social environment where there's action happening, whether it could be something that's happened in a mixed martial arts event that's spectacular. You might get 20 million hits, and then something like a kid, basically trying to imitate Gordon Ramsay will get another 20 million hits. So you'll get it's just action that sort of dictates sort of thing. And once people start sharing it, it just can go very viral. But yeah, that's really good. I mean, fishing is obviously a good pastime, and obviously there's enough people around the globe that love fishing anyway. So that makes sense. I mean, whereas all the usual stuff that we have, if we get more than 100 or 1,000 hits, we feel lucky, I think.
Yeah,
that's for sure. So that's podcasting. I guess one of probably the final points to finish up on. You've always been, as you said at the start, you've always sort of been tied to Brisbane, really. I haven't really been anywhere else. What is it about the city that you really like? And tell me some of the things that you've seen over the years that have changed, good and bad, in Brisbane, and the things that make you want to stay here. I guess just reinforcing Brisbane here.
So I guess it's one of those things, when you're a 20-year-old, you think Brisbane's, the big country town, and you want to get out of there. And then you get out of there and you come back and you can travel around pretty easily. Like look at that backdrop that we're talking on Zoom at the moment, and you've got Fallon's Brewing Company, the backdrop, having a beer at the river bar and along there. And just also, like, it's not just, all the bars and restaurants and being able to get around easily and how beautiful the river is and how green everything is, but it's also the personalities too. So, we're just kind of pretty genuine. We like to have a laugh and don't take ourselves too seriously. You know, you go to some other Australian cities, one in particular, and, you know, I just don't think you've got that same kind of just laid back, easygoing kind of nature about it. And, you know, so if I had a choice to live anywhere in the world, yeah, Brisbane would be right up there on that list. And I know, you know, I'm kind of tied to Brisbane because that's where my work is and clients are and that kind of thing. But, you know, let's say you won the lotto or anything like that, sure, I'd spend a bit of time going to New Zealand and, you know, travelling a bit, but I think I'd still call Brisbane home.
No, it's I guess
Even,
have you seen
even us, as in, you know, for us, I live, what, a 10-minute drive from the city in Red Hill, sometimes a bit more in peak hour traffic. You know, get there, what, even in the worst peak hour traffic, it's half an hour there, 10 minutes back home. Which, you know, is pretty good. And you have an equivalent place to mine with a pool and, you know, a view and a breeze and all of that, you know, that kind of distance from the city in one of your bigger towns. And it's out of, you know, what my earning capacity. You know, we're pretty lucky, I think.
Yeah, definitely very lucky. Have you seen it sort of change or evolve much though? I mean, I think since I've been here 20 years ago, I think I've seen quite a few changes, and I don't want to waste all the, you know, spending all the different things that I've seen. What have you sort of seen that stuck out over the last 10, 20 years?
Yeah, excuse the noise brigade in the background.
It's okay.
Like, I'm trying to remember back, and they say Expo 88 was the, you know, where Brisbane kind of changed a lot. And I know when I was a kid, you know, there was no such thing as a flat white. You know, when I was quite young, you would go, I think one time my dad, when I was, 6 years old or 7 years old or 8 years old, I was young anyway, he said, look, Kieran, it's your birthday, you can have whatever roast you want. So I said, I'll have roast duck. And so Dad had to drive all around town to try to find a bottle of Contra or Grand Marnier. You know, there was only one place that did it. You know, they just had Goon was what they their bottlers sold, and you know, getting a cup of coffee, you might get some, you know, a Chinese restaurant on the corner that does a sweet and sour pork, but it was pretty kind of simple what our tastes were. But now we've had, you know, all different cultures, you know, the Vietnamese and all different cultures, you know, the Greeks all over the years, and, you know, everything that all of these different cultures have brought, and, you know, being able to go out for those kind of cheap heats and, you know, have a drink out and about, I think that's great. And, you know, one thing I hope, you know, that we continue on the route of is sometimes I get a bit concerned in Australia. We're all about all these rules about, you know, 100 rules of where you can have your drink and, you know, when you can get served, this and that and that. You know, I hope that we don't continue going down that, and you know, we are responsible enough that we can, you know, have a bit of a license to enjoy ourselves and not have every single aspect of our lives regulated. But, you know, so far it's been pretty good, especially, yeah, the outdoor dining and the outdoor drinking and, you know, that kind of thing. It's, you know, we're a great climate and a great culture to enjoy all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, with what's happened in more recent times, it's certainly very difficult to predict what the future looks like sometimes when we're sort of looking at what might, you know, what that will be.
Even with that, Tim, with the COVID, you know, social distancing restrictions, you know, they take some away, but they're giving some too. So, you know, they're like allowing people to do some, you know, take home cocktails and, you know, take home drinks from bars, and, you know, there's some further liberties they're giving us as a bit of a concession of all the things they've taken away. You know, maybe they'll go, oh, well, hey, we didn't kill each other, kill everyone when that happened. Maybe, you know, we can continue giving ourselves a few more liberties as part of this, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some people sort of looked at the last couple of months and say it's good to have. For some people, it's been good just to have a little bit of a break as well, just to sort of be a bit more insular, a little bit, and just reflect on a few things rather than sort of being too caught up in sort of everyday life. But you get to a point now, I guess, where you're thinking, okay, where are things going to look like in the future? Am I going to be able to do what I like to do? Am I going to be able to go to different parties with 200 people? Am I going to be able to go to those musical festivals? Is there going to be musical festivals in the future? So there's a lot of different questions out there that hopefully get sort of answered over time, and how this, you know, this sort of disease with the COVID, how that, you know, where it's going to sort of, you know, is there going to be other waves coming? Is there going to be something else? It's leaves a lot of questions that weren't there. and
I
it's
think
sort of certainly putting a lot of people uneasy. But at the end of the day, we just got to live every day as it comes and just predict what we can or live with what we can.
yeah, and whilst overseas travel's going to be off the
Yeah.
and festival potentially going to be off the agenda for quite a while. Like even just walking in the local park with the kids, realised how grateful I was. What beautiful weather, and how beautiful it is. And then look at that backdrop behind you, and look at all the beautiful places that we can go locally, and hopefully to New Zealand and that soon too. There's plenty to do, and there's plenty to be lucky about. Yeah, so I guess it's not something we got to enjoy what's in front of us, Tim, rather than worrying about what we can't have and that kind of stuff. And we're very,
Yeah, I
very
think
lucky
so. I think you just got to, as I said, take it as it comes. And if we can't go to an AFL grand final with 100,000 people, then that's obviously change. So
but I'll tell you what I am looking forward to, and I haven't had for a few months now, is a cold draft beer. Especially, I'm imagining one looking at that river behind.
I'm surprised you haven't sort of gone to the bottle shop and got yourself. Well, you're drinking wine at home, aren't you?
Yeah, it's not quite the same getting those mini kegs, etc. I got some friends who brew their own and that type of thing. But there's something special about, especially being by the river and having a draft beer. I like draft beer when I go out because I don't have that at home. So,
yeah.
How good's it going to taste? When you don't have something for a couple of months, it's going to be a whole lot better when you do, isn't it?
Any particular favourite type of craft beer that you like to drink, or?
I've got one in the fridge tonight. Now that it's colder weather, a Stone and Wood that do this dark porter. What's it called? They do it a wood-fired porter. Geez, I've forgotten its name. And so I might have one of those after our conversation today. And a bit of Stone and Wood cloud catcher. I don't mind as a summer kind of ale. And then I've even been getting into some weird things lately. I was drinking some agave-based sour beer that doesn't really taste like beer at all. But there's a local bottle near me that's got a few weird kind of concoctions, so it's good trying them. But you can only drink a few of some of those very peculiar beers, or even some of those sweeter pale ales. I think after then they get a bit too much.
Have you tried that Soapbox brand? The one that. Yeah, it's quite good. They've got one a beer that tastes like an ice Vovo.
Yeah, okay. Well, so one of my best friends, he lives next door to the guy who owns the Soapbox, and they do kegs. Those mini kegs, pretty well priced. One thing I've been toying about, I haven't done it. I should organise it. Is all of us with young kids. I got the 1.5-year-old and the almost 4-year-old. Is been toying with the idea of getting one of those mini kegs and putting it on for a couple of bottles of wine, and maybe taking turns between some different families down at the local playground or the local park where you put it's your turn to put a keg on the first Sunday of the month or something. I think not a huge keg, but I think that'd be a pretty pleasant Sunday afternoon. Subject to liquor licensing laws and all of that, as long as you're not selling it, I think. But maybe 2020 is a year to stop talking about it and start doing it.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's anything sort of, I guess, final to add to the podcast. It's coming up to the 1 hour mark, and it's certainly been a great to catch up, Kieran, over Zoom and on the podcast. So, is there anything else that you wanted? Anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, mate. I didn't really have any. I hadn't done one of these before. Didn't have any expectations beforehand. It's been good shooting the breeze with you, Tim, and. Lots of challenges in a funny world we live in, and that's part of the fun. I kind of feel like a bit more alive with all these things going on. Interesting times.
It is interesting times. I do thank you very much. I do hope you have a couple of beers tonight, and maybe some wine over the weekend or something, and reflect on where things are going at the moment. But I'm sure you do that. But yeah, keep up the good work in the area of self-managed super fund specialisation. Being a thought leader in this area in Brisbane, is certainly it's great. I congratulate you on having a great career to date. It's certainly you and Steve Grant obviously work very, very well together. You've got a great firm. I hope you continue to continues to evolve with the times as well, which I'm sure it will. And all the best in the future, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, and you know, great job yourself on putting yourself out there in the world, and getting into people's houses and businesses and getting their stories out there, and making sure that you're always out and about. I'm seeing your face all over the place, so you're an important figure in many people's lives. So thank you.
No, thanks, mate. I'll get this. We'll get this uploaded later on tonight, and you better share it. Just share it around to your group and network. It'll be interesting to see how popular the podcast is. As I said before, I've got no idea exactly how many people are going to listen to or have a look at the podcast, but it's certainly got a lot to do with the caliber of the person on there and how they share it, and sometimes a lot of luck. So
yeah. Oh well, it's new to me. I haven't done too many of the podcasts. So I think I've only done one other podcast before. So yeah, send me the link and we'll see how we go. Yeah,
it'll be up, be on probably Instagram, Facebook, so that'll be up there on all the different platforms. Anyway, thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Thanks, Kieran.
All right, cheers, Tim. Pleasure talking with you.